This video is about online mapping and LiDAR and why you don't want to use that information. We've been serving the land surveying and civil engineering software business for almost 50 years. We've been in the precision mapping business. Most of you know us as a land planning firm. We work all over the world. We take data in from the land surveyors, typically from CAD, and often we refuse data from online sources that are free, such as city, county maps, and the topo. And I want to discuss why we don't accept a lot of this data, and either should you. Many think that the data you get for free from the counties or the cities replace the need for a land surveyor. Nothing could be further from the truth. And we tell our clients, we could use the data for planning, but you're going to pay for our services twice. First, they get a plan using the free data, and then we get the actual land survey, which is likely to be much different. We're going to do everything over again. And the danger is, when you have bad data to begin with, you're going to be running your numbers and your financial projections on something that might not be real, and you'll move forward with the project only to find out later on either the information was bad, inaccurate, or things like you see the wetlands and the floodplain on free data that are much different than the reality once it's surveyed. I'm going to give you a few examples. On this development in Buffalo, Minnesota, I warned the developer I don't want to use that data. At the end of the day, everything shifted by about 25 feet, not in our favor, and the numbers they ran on our original plan were simply wrong. But that was data that was pretty close. And in Minnesota and Wisconsin, city and county maps are at least looked at from a surveying accuracy perspective. We put together this map here for Eagan, Minnesota, that came from Dakota County, and the Dakota County surveyor made sure those property lines were done by precision, but there's still, as you can see here, this is on the old Cray Computer Company parcel, an overlap between owners that is quite large, meaning there's a conflict between two surveys. And we put together this 36 square miles. I would say this is one of the better GIS maps in the nation, but I still wouldn't depend on it to get a precise land plan. Just because wetlands show up, or maybe they don't show up, that data isn't going to be from a wetland expert that was on the ground staking out the wetland, and then a surveyor came in to geo-rectify it to match the site itself. So in short, for boundary information, easements, wetlands, other restrictions, floodplains, I really don't trust that data. So why aren't the city and county maps done accurately? To trace a map in by hand, just real quickly, or enter some parcel data in, it can be done cheaply, and it can be done fast. But there's no way to get a survey accurate city or county in without being incredibly time consuming and incredibly expensive. And you get what you pay for. Now, to make a bad situation quite a bit worse, I want to talk about topo and LiDAR. And we do get really good clean topo data from a lot of cities and counties. So I'm not saying it's all bad. It's just that most of it's bad. But I'm going to show you how to tell good data from bad data. And I'm also going to explain how good data might look good, but it might actually be bad. So the first thing we look out for is contours, what they look like. Over here is a map before LiDAR, before all this computers, and it shows nice smooth contour lines. And aerial mapping companies used to go through these stereoscopes and trace these lines painstakingly from orthophotos, but it was good contour data. And it was incredibly expensive and very tedious to create these maps. But you see how the contour lines just flow very smoothly and very naturally. Now let's take a look at digital data from a county that appears really good. This is what we want to see. Again, smooth contour lines, but when we import it into the computer, it's also not an absurd amount of data. And this tells us it's pretty good data. And they used a LiDAR company that did a really good job. But it doesn't guarantee the topo's actually in the right place compared to the boundary. And sometimes we don't know that. But sometimes we we do know where a hill is or some physical feature on the ground that the topo doesn't match. And I have seen several jobs in the past 2 years that we've gotten where the contour and the physical data shown on the survey or the line work that's shown on the city GIS map was off more than 500 feet. And just last week we had one where the city map was in one horizontal plane, but the topo apparently had taken curvature of the earth. So there's no way for the topo data to be perfectly aligned with the mapping data, and we found it to be quite a bit off in very critical, finite areas that would have affected the planning process as well as the civil engineering process. So what we look for is contour data. When it is clean data, do those contours line up with the streets? Do they line up with the creeks? You really have to look at that data because sometimes it doesn't. And for those that don't know engineering and surveying and all this stuff and they just take the data off the internet, which includes a lot of engineers, very few surveyors. Actually, I don't know any that would trust that online mapping data. But we found a lot of civil engineers that also think that data replaces the need for a land surveyor. Now here is LiDAR data, an example that's garbage. And typically when we're involved with the site and they hire a LiDAR contractor and we see this data, they don't get paid. We refuse this data until it's done right. And let me explain. Remember those smooth contour lines in nature that's the way the world is. Look at this. The line's spastic. It goes everywhere, and contours don't do that. Not on this planet. This is a LiDAR contractor that droned or flew the site, and they pick up a point about every 2 feet, and they throw this data into the computer, and they press a button, and they give this job to the client, expecting the client to pay for it. But the client doesn't realize topo doesn't do this. And they pay for it, and then this becomes part of a city or county map, and this garbage gets put into the computer, and it is so much data that's wrong, it's going to slow down all of the engineering calculations. And if you're going to use this data and expect a interactive 3D fly-through and all this great stuff this modern computer stuff gives us today that can be done very affordably, forget it. There's way too much data for what used to take a surveyor maybe 100, 200 points on the ground. In that same area, this will spit out 1,000,000 points. And why does this data happen this way? And you'll see it mostly on flat ground, but you'll see it on all ground. And that is when the software comes in and there's no intelligence in software. It just gets all these points, and if the site's relatively flat, it's going to start drawing a contour line. It doesn't know which way to go because everything's kind of flat, and you get all this garbage. There's only one line that comes through here. One line, and that line could be filtered very easily with a few button presses and a few minutes of our time to get it very efficiently to do all of our work, whether it's earthwork or it's digital terrain modeling for various purposes or street design, but most important for our interactive 3D like this, we have to get that data under control. And that's just not us, that's every firm on the planet. So we're not the only ones that have automatic filtering for topo. So automatic filtering needs to have a trend, a smooth trend. This is impossible. And even if I was to snap to some points to try and get a contour to go through that area, I'm guessing as to where that contour is just using my 56 years of experience in this business. What if you only have 2 years experience? Probably wouldn't know where to go with this. And even with my experience, it's not going to be right. So in many times in cases like this, if this data is free, my clients still hire another company, either an on-ground survey or another LiDAR survey of people that know what they're doing so we can have an accurate basis into which to do our planning. I hope this is helpful for you in the future as you're getting site plans to be created and hiring engineering companies, but I would take a seriously look at the value of that land surveyor. I'm most comfortable by a boundary done by a surveyor and the LiDAR done by the same surveyor that guarantees that topo is lined up. We work with them to make sure that data is clean, and then everything beyond that goes very smoothly. Thank you for your time.